Here, strange people dwelt, whose gods granted them the gift of the elixir of life. He pleaded for this gift of immortality for his master, but it was denied him. He claimed it could only be parted with in exchange for rich gifts. 1,000 noblemen and beautiful maidens were required, together with skilled craftsmen. Excited by the prospect of eternal life, the emperor gave leave to proceed. The magician gathered together a large group capable of starting a new colony. They built the necessary ships. The fleet set sail and was never heard from again. 10,000 miles away and 2,000 years later, Larry Pearson travels the coast of Northern California to investigate Indian legends. He hopes to find tales confirming contact between Asia and pre-Columbian America. His first stop is the American Indian Center at Humboldt University, where he consults with Indian expert Bobby Lake.
The Pit River Indians and the Pomo Indian tribal group of northwestern California have an ancient myth or legend or folklore that talks about a giant bridge which went from this area across the ocean to another race of people who they felt or thought or believed were Indians, but their skin color was different. It was more yellowish. And the way the old legend goes is the world was purified by water and everything on earth was destroyed. And many of the high priests and religious leaders knew this was going to happen, so they gathered the people together and they moved up high to the high tops of the mountains.
I think that's interesting. They said that they built a bridge. So does that bridge connect the land we call the United States to China? And this part right here about the floods too. I often wonder, how did, it wasn't Cain, but the man who killed Cain, which the mark of Cain then would fall upon him and his family, how did they survive the flood? Right? Thought about that. Questions I have about the flood, you know what I mean? And if the flood was to purify the earth from all those other peoples, I wonder, and I haven't figured it out, but why was there still giants being born after the flood? See what I'm saying?
While they were up there, some of the visionaries or prophets began to see another race of people who looked like Indians but were yellow-skinned. So somehow or another, you might call it mental telepathy, they started to build a bridge from this part of the continent, while that other race of people started to build a bridge from the other continent. And somewhere in the middle of the ocean, they linked up together.
Maybe the island of Mu? Maybe, I don't know.
And they communicated with each other. And what really signaled all of this was the rainbow. As the yellow race of people left,
and also, don't forget, one thing I know I'm rambling, but one of the things that my mind also thinks about is the sea levels are a lot higher than they were then. And the proof of that is if you go around the Bahamas, there are plenty of temples and palaces that are underneath the ocean. Sitting with Japan off the coast of Japan and China, that meant that the water levels would have been lower because you don't build palaces, and stuff like that underwater,
We're going back, a rainbow came up, and they said someday this physical bridge will be gone, but remember us, our brother, because the rainbow will always be there.
Nearby, where the Klamath River meets the sea, Larry seeks further information from the local Indians. Florence Shaughnessy has lived beside the Klamath River all her life.
We're called the Yurok people, but in Indian, we're called Pulikla. We are the people that walk by the ocean.
To add to the evidence of Asian influence, there are legends of shipwrecks along the northwest coast.
The story was that they found a part of Chinese junk along the coast near Tillamook, Oregon. And so they they had the divers go down, and they did find that it was old. So they figured that the Chinese came over, got caught in a storm, probably all perished, or maybe some of them swam ashore. And they say that some of those Chinese must have survived, and then they went inland, and there was Indians, living all around the coast there, that they intermarried there, because some of the Indians from certain parts of Oregon are slant-eyed, and their skin is just a little different color than the Bronze Indians.
The Japanese...
The Bronze Indians. Okay. One of the things I also thought about while watching this was the word Kool-Aid. How do you say it? Cooles. I was reading where it's a term for Indians that's, I guess, slang. It's offensive. Chinese that were sold from China to Africa and to India as slaves were called this. Those in America were called this. And I wonder, as us being the Afro-Asian, I wonder, where did we learn the slang cool? You know what I'm saying? Does cool derive from the slave word in China, Kool-Aid? And another thing, she's all talking about their slanted eyes and blah, 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 blah. Well, I just want to say, I have relatives that have children, and their children were told, have Asian features, even though neither my sister or my father, my sister or the father of her child are Asian. But they have a friend that's Asian that told them, that claims their little girl as his. He's like, that looks like my daughter, because she has Asian features. If you ever see her, you know what I'm saying, you would say, just a typical everyday, so-called black girl. Which, I'm just saying, I say so-called because, we haven't broke that mold, but you know what I mean. So, just all of that doesn't make any sense, that you could just say that it's the only reason that these people are slanted is because people from Asia over there came over. And yellow people, come on. When you look up those wars, right, between, Ethiopia, the Italians, and I forget who else, a lot of those people in Ethiopia are painted yellow people. They were a mixture of brown and yellow on the Ethiopian side.
Current flows eastward along the 40th parallel, then merges with other currents and reaches the coast of California. There, it splits, one half flowing north to Alaska, the other moving south along the coast of Mexico. At the division, a churning occurs, which is so furious that many vessels riding upon it have been dashed to splinters.
These rocky headlands, such as the point of land behind me, Trinidad Head, on the northern coast of California, are the kinds of obstructions seafarers traveling this coast would have encountered. These sites, of course, are historically known as very high hazard areas, graveyards of ships. There's just such a place on the coast that you'd expect to find the highest likelihood of the remains of ancient craft, particularly the Japanese and Chinese vessels that we know now have been here in pre-Columbian times.
In response to a letter, Larry has come to examine these odd stones discovered by Dick Young, a fisherman who brought them up in his nets off Cape Mendocino. It is known that early Chinese seamen drilled holes in large stones and used them for ship anchors. Many similar stones have been found in Californian and Mexican waters, but most turn out to be naturally formed.
In the case of these two, they're apparently formed in the deep ocean floor. These particular stones are natural. The nucleus could have been a whale bone, a whale vertebrae, but the shape of the hole, the ridges inside, there is no taper here. There are subtle nuances in the hole itself to lead me to believe that they are indeed natural formations rather than being man-made.
As a scientist, Larry is used to such setbacks. The real frustration is not occasional misleading evidence found along the shore, but the fact that China lies across 7,000 miles of ocean. Further, China's doors have been closed until recently to Western scientists. recent trip to the People's Republic of China, the In Search of crew filming in a rural area found some large old stone rollers on a farm. We were interested to learn that these rollers had often been used as ship's anchors in early times. They are still used by some Chinese riverboats today, ships of ancient design called junks. They are basically river vessels used by fishermen for centuries. In the famed Peking Museum, we found evidence that much larger seagoing junks once existed in the distant past. The skeleton of a giant sailing vessel has been uncovered. A fleet of ships of such size could have carried thousands of passengers.
Now, I think it's interesting too. Think about that, right? You seen those boats? They can still prove they had boats from back during the time, right? What they said, 1,000 years before Columbus, right? They still can prove they have boats that sailed them to the Americas and back, or to different places and back. But you can't find the slave ships that were used in the removing of Africans from Africa to bring them to the Americas. I think that's interesting, right?
Remnants of this huge rudder indicate the ship was hundreds of feet long. A modern Chinese artist depicts how a fleet of these huge junks would have looked. Marco Polo told of long sea voyages made by the Chinese as they traded with such faraway places as India and Persia. But these were coastal trips. Could Chinese junks have survived long voyages in the open Pacific? To prove such a voyage possible, journalist Kuno Knoble and a group of fellow adventurers built a sailing junk as close as possible to ancient design. They named it the Taiki. Their plan, to catch the Japanese current to the North American coast, then southward to Central America. Despite calms and storms, all went reasonably well, until midway. They discovered the ship was under attack by thousands of sea worms, burrowing into the wood and undermining the hull. It was then that the typhoon hit.
To sound like a jerk, but the worms almost sound biblical, right?
The ship increasingly took on water, filling the hold. To stay afloat, the crew pumped frantically day and night in mountainous seas.
You with all your modern technology, you're having a rough time just crossing the Pacific. Now imagine all this trying to cross the Atlantic. Transatlantic slave
Helpless.
trade. The transatlantic trade slave. That is funny.
When the rudder broke, they sent out an urgent message from their sputtering radio and waited.
Wait, the rudder broke. And you're in the Pacific. Pacific means peaceful, right? Now you're going to tell me you made these trips from the Atlantic just easy peasy? All year long, you can just grab slaves and bring them over from Africa, right? Come on.
Their message had been heard. First, a Coast Guard plane from Juneau arrived, dropping supplies. Shortly thereafter, they were picked up by a freighter, from which they watched their dream, the Taiki, lurch aimlessly away, lost over the horizon. In spite of shipworms and storms, they did pass the midpoint in their journey, proving that ancient junks were capable of lengthy voyages in the open sea. There are are other discoveries which could prove that early Chinese explorers did complete such voyages 1,000 years before Columbus. Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic in his flagship, the Santa Maria, in 1492 and discovered America. Was Columbus the first? It is generally accepted that the Vikings, acknowledged to be daring seafarers, predated Columbus here. Many monuments still remain as possible proof of their settlements. Stone walls of Phoenician design found in New Hampshire.
That's why I wanted you to hear stone walls of Phoenicians. Who were the Phoenicians, right? Right? In New Hampshire, one of the coldest places you're gonna go live in America, right? That's up there towards that Canada part. That's up above me in New York.
Indicate that they too might have been early visitors. This theory is strengthened by writings found at the site that some experts believe to be Phoenician. To argue who discovered America first is to ignore the fact it has been populated for hundreds of thousands of years. More important, we should examine what effects visitors from other lands have had on early Indian civilizations. About 1,500 years ago, a sudden cultural surge occurred in Central America, which has mystified the world of archaeology for many years. Some believe this may have been brought about by contact from China. The Buddhist religion was flourishing in China in the...
I think it's interesting too because in that book, was it Mystery of the Mexican Pyramid, they have a statue in there that looks something like this.
6th century. In a monastery in Shenxi province, these statues stand guard over the records of Buddhist history. We learn from these stone tablets that in 570 AD, several monks set sail across the Great Sea to seek new converts to the Buddhist faith. The official account of their voyage states that the monk Hu Shen and his companions, sailing eastward, came upon the shores of a strange, faraway land. The distance logged was 20,000 leagues, or about 7,000 nautical miles. This would place them on the coast of Southern California. The account does not record their feelings as they cautiously entered a strange new land. Only that they made their way inland through forests, across mountains and deserts for 350 miles.
And you did all this with no supplies?
At last, they stood on the rim of a great canyon, banded with many colors. Could they?
But if this be the fact, this might explain why there are Buddhist stuff in the temples. In the temples, but in the canyon, right? This might also explain why there is a Buddhist temple in the mountains of Colorado.
They have been describing the Grand Canyon. The account continues that at the bottom of the canyon, far below, there was a river winding among boulders. Making their way south, they crossed a great desert where the inhabitants ate the purple fruit of a strange tree they called the Fusang tree. Was this a cactus? Finally, they came through dense jungles, arriving, some believe, in Central America, just prior to the great cultural flowering of the Mayan civilization. That the learned monk Hu Shen could have brought the Mayans advanced knowledge from China is discussed by Dr. James Moriarty of the University of San Diego.
I hold with many archaeologists that Central American and Mexican cultures, early ones, may very well have been influenced by some type of Asiatic contact.
Good word, some type of Asiatic.
My reasons for this are not unique, and they're...
That's right, because don't forget, that Mormon that tried to prove the Book of Mormons took place in, Mexico, right? And they were the Mayans and they're the Aztecs and stuff like that. Remember, they did that whole DNA sequence, and their DNA did not match up with the Ashkenazi Jews, or the Native Americans. Instead, he said the results came back that they were, what? Asian.
Found in the works of many who since the 1800s, late 1800s, have worked on these problems. During the Han Dynasty, a certain type of bowl with certain kinds of feet was a prominent feature of that culture. You will find similar bowls in some Mexican cultures. You will find jade work, which has been much discussed by some of my colleagues, which certainly shows Chinese influence, and possibly even some pieces that are of Chinese origin.
In China, we were permitted into the Forbidden City. The former imperial palace is now a museum, housing special relics of the past. We were allowed to film the ancient jade soldier. The soldier's body, in burial, had been completely encased. It is significant that jade burial masks of the same period have been found in Mayan excavations. In China, we also filmed many serpent heads, only to find identical figures in Central America. The Mayans believed these serpents to be the representation of the man god who brought them knowledge. Is it
The man god that brought them knowledge. That was a serpent, right? Interesting.
possible that this contact with Chinese culture accounts for the Mayans' remarkable knowledge of astronomy? Or mere coincidence that this Mayan calendar is similar to Chinese calendars of the period? In many Mayan museums, we found startling items. There were never any elephants in America.
Lies. Because they found elephant remains in, what was that? The black belt of what's that place called? Alabama. The black belt of Alabama, they found elephant remains. Feet and tusk. So don't give us that.
This Mayan relief depicts one. The Mayan face had a distinctive shape, yet occasionally faces are found.
No. Honestly. Stop, set back, and think about this. That face. I know they claim it was Asian, it's Chinese. But haven't we seen people that we call black or Negroes with that face? I'm telling you right now, you can even see this in Africa with those dark black skinned people that we call Africans.
That appear to be Chinese.
I just, look at that. Look at that face. It goes either way. I'm not joking. Sit back and look at that. You've seen that face in your own neighborhoods. Look at the thick lips.
The Mayan god of happiness is unmistakably Chinese. The image.
No. This one's, hopefully they give us a better image, because this almost here reminded me of that one statue that they tried to put next besides Lil Wayne and say that,
Of this
the God never went anywhere. It's Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne's always saying he's from Mars, whatever.
bearded man continues to be a mystery.
Bearded man, look at it. Look at him.
It is known that Indians do not have facial hair. Who then was this Oriental man found in Mayan excavations?
But I think you get it. This video is just about over. I'm just saying, they're connected. They came here looking for the fountain of youth after they heard that there was such a thing here. Let me see, where is this? I want to find it. I always pass it. I already tried looking for it earlier today, and I passed over it. Where is it? Come on. Where are you? Gotta go back through here and clear out some of my old history here. So, sorry about this. They're connected.
which today forms the nations of the Dominican Republic and
They
Haiti.
are connected. The fountain of youth. And I just think it's interesting that, I mean, just two large people groups, you know what I'm saying, both came here looking for everlasting life. But yet they had, in Europe, they had Jesus. And he was supposed to give them everlasting life, right? So just think about it, right? I'll be back later.